The skies over Europe darkened with the roar of engines. The Luftwaffe, unstoppable, rained fire upon London. And in the halls of power, a German officer smirked, his voice dripping with certainty. Their factories will burn, their soldiers will break, we have already won. But history would prove him wrong. By the summer of 1940, Hitler's blitzkrieg had crushed France. Britain stood alone, its back against the wall. Across the Atlantic, America remained unprepared, its factories still churning out cars, not tanks. The Axis believed the war was over before it had truly begun. But beneath the surface, something was stirring. Beneath the rubble of London, a machine was waking up, one that Germany could never destroy. The Allies were not just fighting a war of bullets and bombs, they were fighting a war of production, and the Axis had no idea what was coming. In Berlin, the High Command was certain. A strategist leaned over the maps, his voice calm, almost dismissive. Their industry is fragile. A few raids and their war effort collapses. They believed their bombers could break the will of nations. They were wrong. They underestimated the scale, the speed, the sheer, relentless power of Allied industrial depth. In Detroit, the heart of American manufacturing, factories that once built cars now churned out tanks. The transition was swift, the output unstoppable. In Britain, the shift was just as dramatic. Factories that once produced consumer goods now roared with the sound of war. Overnight, assembly lines were retooled, and when the first Churchill tanks rolled out, the workers knew. They were no longer just building machines, they were building victory. In Washington, the decision was made. Congress approved Lend-Lease, and with a stroke of his pen, Franklin D. Roosevelt declared, "We will be the arsenal of democracy." The words were not just a promise, they were a warning to the Axis. At Willow Run, Ford made a bold claim, a bomber every hour. The plant was a marvel of engineering, a testament to American ingenuity. And when the first B-24 Liberators rolled off the line, the message was clear. The Allies were not just fighting back, they were overwhelming. But first, the supplies had to cross the Atlantic, and the U-boats were waiting. The Wolfpacks struck with deadly precision, sending tons of steel and supplies to the ocean floor. The Allies were bleeding in the water, but the Allies adapted. Escorts, radar, the Wolfpacks were outmaneuvered. The convoys kept moving, and with every ship that reached port, the noose around Germany tightened. In the shipyards of America, a miracle of industry unfolded. Liberty ships, the lifelines of the Allied war effort, were being built in just 4 days, faster than the U-boats could sink them. Each rivet, each weld, was a defiant answer to the Nazi blockade. As the Wehrmacht advanced, Stalin's empire did not crumble, it moved. Entire factories were uprooted, transported eastward, beyond the Urals. The Luftwaffe could bomb Moscow, but they could not touch what mattered most. In the shadow of the Urals, a new arsenal of democracy took shape. T-34s, the finest tanks of the war, emerged from factories the Luftwaffe could never bomb. Every tank, every shell was a promise. Germany's blitzkrieg would meet its end in the endless steppes of the East. But machines alone could not win the war. Men were needed, millions of them. In the muddy fields of Britain, raw recruits were forged into soldiers. The old empire, battered but unbroken, was preparing its revenge. Across the Atlantic, America answered the call. 10 million men would be trained. Fast, efficient, relentless. The sleeping giant had awoken, and its factories were not the only weapons in its arsenal. From the beaches of California to the moors of Scotland, the Allies drilled their armies to perfection. Every obstacle course, every live-fire exercise was a step toward victory. The Nazis had unleashed their blitzkrieg. Now the Allies would unleash theirs. In the shadows, elite units were forged. The British commandos, trained in secrecy, would strike where the enemy least expected. The war would not be won by numbers alone. It would be won by men who dared the impossible. And from the skies, a new kind of warrior descended. The airborne divisions, trained to strike anywhere, would turn the tide of the war. The Nazis had thought themselves invincible until the Allies came from above. Even the home front fought. In the factories of the Soviet Union, women assembled rifles. In the fields of America, farmers grew food for the war effort. Every hand, every machine counted. The Allies were not just an army, they were a nation at war. In Berlin, the truth was becoming clear. German intelligence reports piled up, each one more alarming than the last. The Allies' production numbers were impossible, the war was slipping away, and there was nothing the Nazis could do to stop it. In the heart of America, a new beast awoke. The first Sherman tanks rumbled off the assembly lines, their tracks clanking against the concrete. 50,000 would follow, each one a promise, each one a hammer blow against the Reich. High above the fields of England, the skies trembled. The B-17s climbed, their wings heavy with purpose. Daylight bombing, precision. No more hiding in the dark. Germany's cities would burn, not from blind rage, but from calculated destruction. The guns spoke first, a wall of steel and fire. But for every plane that fell, 10 more took its place. The Allies built faster than Germany could shoot. Factories in Detroit, in Birmingham, in Omaha, they never slept. Then came the Mustangs, silver arrows with teeth. No longer would the bombers fly alone. No longer would the Luftwaffe find sanctuary. The hunters became the hunted. The skies over Germany were no longer theirs. Numbers do not lie. For every Messerschmitt that rolled off German lines, the Allies built 10. For every pilot the Luftwaffe trained, the Allies trained 20. The math was simple. The outcome certain. Fuel, the lifeblood of war. Germany thirsted for it. The Allies drowned in it. From the sands of the Middle East to the ports of Texas, the oil flowed. Tanks, planes, trucks, none could move without it. And Germany was running dry. Then came the fire, the last reserves, the final drops. Allied bombers turned the Romanian oil fields into infernos. The flames licked the sky, consuming the Reich's last hope. Without fuel, the war machine would choke. On the Eastern Front, the beasts of war gasped their last. Tanks stood silent, their engines cold. No fuel, no parts, no hope. The war was not lost on the battlefield. It was lost in the factories, in the refineries, in the relentless math of production. Tires, hoses, seals, the little things that win wars. Germany had none. The Allies had mountains. Synthetic rubber flowed from American plants, turning the tide in, ways no general could foresee. The tide of war was measured in steel. More ships, more supplies, more men. Every rivet, every hull, every cargo hold was a blow Germany could not answer. The hunters became the hunted. The wolf packs that once ruled the waves now fled, their losses mounting. The Atlantic was no longer Germany's killing ground, it was their graveyard. The greatest invasion in history was coming. Not just an army, but an unstoppable force. The Allies had built more than weapons. They had built inevitability. The landing craft that would deliver victory. Simple, sturdy, mass-produced. Not just boats, lifelines. The means to storm a continent. June 6, 1944. The first waves hit the shore. Blood, fire, chaos. But the tide turned. The beachhead held. The fortress had cracked. The pipeline was open. A river of steel and fuel flowing from the beaches to the front. Germany could bomb, but they could not stop it. The truth was undeniable. One voice cut through the noof. Chaos. We cannot match their production. The war was lost before the last shot was fired. The Red Ball Express, 12,000 tons a day. A lifeline of steel and rubber feeding the advance. Germany's war machine was starving. The Allies were unstoppable. No fuel, no ammunition, no retreat. The once mighty Wehrmacht, now a hollow force, left to rot on the roadsides of a war they could no longer fight. Their supply lines severed. Every bomb that fell was a nail in the coffin of Nazi logistics. The Allies had turned the skies into a weapon, and Germany's war machine was bleeding out. From the east, the hammer fell. Stalin's armies, forged in the fires of Stalingrad, crushed everything in their path. The Third Reich's days were numbered. From the west, the anvil closed. Eisenhower's armies, supplied by an unbreakable industrial might, pushed forward with unstoppable force. The noose was tightening. The end was near. The maps told the story. Allied forces converging, Reich collapsing. Hitler's thousand-year dream was burning to ashes. The home front collapsed. The people who had cheered the Blitzkrieg now starved in the ruins. The war had come home, and Germany was paying the price. The camps fell. The truth emerged. The world would never forget what had been done in the shadows of the Third Reich. May 8, 1945. The war in Europe was over. The guns fell silent. The people rejoiced. The nightmare was ended. They had lost the war before they even knew it. The Allies had built a machine of war so vast, so relentless, that Germany's bombs could never break it. The machine didn't stop. The factories kept turning. The Allies had won in Europe, but the fight was not yet over. Japan was next. The ultimate weapon. Born of the same industrial might that had already decided the war. While Germany's bombs fell on cities, the Allies built something far more devastating. August 6, 1945. The war's end was written in fire. A single bomb, the culmination of years of relentless innovation and production, sealed the fate of an empire. The Axis was broken, not just by soldiers on the battlefield, but by the machines, the factories, the relentless tide of production that Germany could never match. The lesson of World War II was clear. Industry doesn't just win wars, it shapes history, and the Allies had mastered it. The unbreakable arsenal had not just defeated a nation, it had forged a new world.